The NFL salary cap has increased to a point never seen before. And also, A.J. Brown is sick and tired of the latest rumors coming out of Philadelphia. We're going to get to all of that today on a Friday edition of Football with Faria.
It's time for Football with Faria.
You got to get the offense right, and you got to be able to be aggressive. They put up 14 against the secondary. That is driving me up a freaking wall right now.
Now here's your host, Nick Faria.
All righty. Thank you guys for coming on this Friday evening edition of Football with Faria. We have a lot to get to today. So first, before we get started, I want to thank all of you that are listening for the first time. If you're coming on, welcome to the show. If not, if you guys are returnees, welcome back. Like, subscribe, share the video, do all the stuff that you guys do. You guys have been absolutely incredible. Last Wednesday's show was the highest viewed one that we've had. I'd love to continue building on that. Outside of all that, though, let's get to some of the biggest news because we can really go two different directions here. We can go the on-field stuff, the on-field news that's coming out with the New York Jets, the salary cap increasing by $30 million, never before seen in the National Football League. It's been 13 years since 2011. The salary cap has doubled. Absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible. We're going to talk about all the effects that that's going to have on a team like the New York Jets in just a little bit. But first, we have to start off. You may not like it. You may not agree with it, Jet fans. You may want to wait, pause, and catch up with me later. But holy crap. A.J. Brown, finally sick and tired of all the bullshit going on at 94.1 WIP. For those of you that don't know what that is Philadelphia's top sports talk show radio station. They are essentially the group that has been saying that A.J. Brown is a cancer and that he should be traded, and the conversations should be only about what was going wrong with the Eagles when they collapsed and lost 6 of their final 7 games. A.J. Brown called into the program today. For those of you that are not sure and you guys want to see an ass kicking, holy crap. Take a look at that clip. Absolutely incredible. A.J. Brown comes on and embarrasses an entire radio station for 20 minutes. That was probably the most embarrassing 20 minutes I have ever seen a professional radio station, news organization, whatever you want to call it, a professional station. That was the most embarrassing 20 minutes I have ever seen. It's not just that A.J. Brown walked in and said, you guys are losers. He walked in and essentially said, so what is your problem with me? I understand you guys all have complaints about how the season ended. Tell me what your problem is with me. And the host, the poor host, that really weren't the guys that were talking about A.J. in that light. They were just talking about the ways that the team can improve. But A.J. talked to these guys that really weren't part of the problem. And they were like, well, we don't have it, but other people have complained. Other people are worried about the sideline antics and you not talking to the media. And Brown went at him. He went at all of them. There was a quote, I couldn't believe it, how this was going on. He essentially was saying, this is why I didn't want to talk, because everything I say is going to be taken out of context. So I'm just going to take away your entire process of trying to build out random stories and take that all away from you. And then the hosts, Ike Reese, Jack Fritz, again, they aren't the problem at WIP. They aren't the bad guys there. But the poor guys were saying, well, what about Kellen Moore? You got a new offensive coordinator. And A.J. Brown interrupted that in the middle of asking a question and said, no. I'm not here to talk about the Eagles. I'm here to talk about me because you've made this about me. You're the ones that have gone after me time and time again for the last 3 weeks, complaining about what I am or am not doing. So tell me, let's keep talking about it. What's your problem with me? Brown didn't let these guys breathe for 20 minutes. There was a particular time where A.J. Brown was asking about trade rumors. And he essentially said, and A.J. Brown essentially said, so who wants to trade me? He's like, where did the trade rumors start? And, of course, Fritz and Reese were like, we don't know. It was just more of a speculation piece on our point. He's like, right. So because you guys tried to speculate as the leading station in Sports Talk Philadelphia, you guys made something that wasn't there. It was the most embarrassing 20 minutes for a radio station I have ever seen in my entire life. Oh my God, it was incredible. It was that it has made, like, I thought the Carl Banks situation with WFAN, I thought that was embarrassing. I thought it was really embarrassing. You have Tierney, and again, if I'm wrong, correct me, but it was Tierney and Sal that wanted to talk to Banks about certain topics. Banks didn't want to talk about it, and they essentially cut him off and hung up on him. An all-time great giant was hung up on because two hosts were a little too big for their britches. That's my point. That was embarrassing. This takes the cake because Banks, for all his credit, he's a retired player. He's pushing a book. He's pushing different topics. A.J. Brown went on, called the radio station unannounced. This was not planned. Unannounced. And went after everyone in the radio station. Everyone that has built a rumor around a trade or him being unhappy or any ridiculous statement that has been made in the last month. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Couldn't believe it. The outlook of WIP is one that is clearly about guys trying to get the most clicks as possible, the most views as possible. And unfortunately, those outside of WIP are taking them as the de facto numbers and stats of everything. And they're taking them for their word. They're taking them for the truth that they feel that they're bringing. But in reality, they're not bringing anything other than their own opinions. And A.J. Brown, essentially, for 20 minutes, had the entire radio station looking and twiddling their thumbs going, well, yeah, we're giving him this, and he's basically telling us we suck. But, hey, this is viewership for us, so yay! That was embarrassing. Embarrassing for a radio station. So that's just my thoughts on A.J. Brown speaking to WIP. We're going to get to the Jet stuff now. I know you guys are waiting for that. But first, obviously, like we talked about, the salary cap increasing $30 million. It's the most in NFL history from a single year. And a lot of different teams, like the New York Jets, are going to be moving out of cap hell to being flexible with their salary cap space. So ultimately, if you're going to look at this in the respective market of New York and of the New York Jets, you have to look at the salary cap is a great thing. It's an absolute great thing because they went from $1 million in cap space according to Over the Cap. Now they have $15 million. $15 million. Now we can sit here and say $15 million is not a lot. You know, they still have a lot of work to do. And everyone's right. They still have a lot of work to do. But the contract restructures are coming. They're going to restructure Laken Tomlinson's deal. They're going to restructure C.J. Mosley's deal. There's going to be other contract restructures that are going to save salary cap space for the organization. This is not a one-time thing. The Jets are going to do what they need to do to save money. And the question is going to be, how much money are they actually going to have after these restructures? We've done a little bit of the math. Before the salary cap increased, there was a chance to get the Jets salary cap room to around $50 million. $50 million in cap space. That's what the Jets would have to play with. Now, with the salary cap moving up to $15 million, the Jets are going to have close to around $60 to $70 million in cap space after the restructures happen. After they bring everyone to the dealing table and say, you want to stay here? Let's get a deal done. They're going to say that to Mosley. They're going to say that to Laken. They're going to say that to Quincy. They're going to say that to Quinn. They're saying it to everyone. Everyone who can get their deal restructured and save salary cap space, the Jets are going to talk to. Because like we've talked about, this is now or never for the organization. You have to do everything in your power to get the most salary cap space and do everything in your power to bring in the top free agents, whether that's T. Higgins, whether that's Mike Evans, whether that's Owenwu from New England. You do what you can to get the top talent. Plain and simple. And with $60, $70 million, you're absolutely going to be able to do that. And we're going to talk about one player in just a little bit. Again, Football with Faria here. Nick hosting this Friday evening show for you Jets, Eagles, and NFL fans out there. Biggest news today out of the NFL is that the salary cap is increasing $30 million. Jets fans, let me know. Is this the answer you guys need to understand that Bryce Huff might not be leaving? Are you guys now knowing that the salary cap has increased a significant amount? Are you guys okay with Bryce Huff staying with the organization, whether it be by the franchise tag or a long-term deal? All of this is up in the air. And let me tell you, I said this before, and I know a few guys on the beat have said this already, where they don't think Bryce Huff is going to be back even with the salary cap increase. But I got to tell you, if there's a change that's going to happen, it's going to happen with Bryce Huff. The salary cap increasing this much and being able to restructure these deals are not just going to go, and the team is not going to throw $30 million at T. Higgins. They're going to throw like 20, 25 million. And that's perfectly okay, perfectly acceptable. But if you're the Jets and you have a chance to bring back Bryce Huff on a franchise tag deal, and you only have to give up $20 million, guys, you understand how incredible value that would be? I still think that they could get him for lower. I think the sweet spot for him is going to be around $17.5 million. That contract that he's looking for is probably not going to be there. Just my overall thoughts, because as great as he played last year, as dominant as he was last year, the comparison I keep turning to is Hassan Reddick. Reddick didn't get the long-term deal he wanted after his 10-sack season with Arizona. He didn't get the deal he wanted. So he went to Carolina for a one-year deal, a prove-it deal, put up another 10-sack season, and then walked in free agency again. And he still didn't get the deal he wanted. So he settled for a $15 million annual deal with Philadelphia. I wouldn't be surprised, because of the sort of the comparisons that you can bring between Huff and Reddick. I wouldn't be surprised if the same thing happens with Bryce Huff. I wouldn't be surprised at all. And I'm not saying, you don't put the franchise tag on him, because what if you're overspending that value? If you have $60, $70 million in cap space, like the Jets could potentially have, $20 million is nothing. It's nothing. And Bryce Huff absolutely makes your team better next year. Having Bryce Huff, Will McDonald, Jermaine Johnson, and Michael Clemens as your defensive ends, that's a great defensive end group. It's a great group. And not even counting John Franklin Myers. There's 4, 5, 6 guys that you would still have under contract for 2024 to go all in for. All in. And that's what the Jets should be doing. And this is why I say the salary cap increasing is so important to this conversation, because it allows the Jets to be flexible with Huff. It's no longer about giving him a long-term deal. It's not, because they have the ability now to create that cap space and get him on the franchise tag without having to spend a lot of money. And then let's play devil's advocate here. Let's say they give the franchise tag to Bryce Huff. Let's say they negotiate, they do everything they can. They try to bring him in, they try to get a long-term deal, and Huff says no. And the Jets create all the cap space. They get up to like $75 million in cap space, and they franchise tag Bryce Huff. Now they have $55 million in cap space. Do you mean to tell me that when it comes to Bryce Huff at $20 million for 1 year, pushing the chips all into 2024, that you can't build a winning team after that? Think of it otherwise. Think of this other phrase that I like to say. If they were to franchise tag him this year and they make the playoffs, they get to the AFC Championship game, and Bryce Huff has a 10-sack season again, And then they say, okay, we're not going to sign you to a long-term deal. We're going to let you walk. You know what the Jets would get back from a lucrative contract like that? Probably a third-round pick. Probably a third-rounder. And that's how you deflect your value. Because next year, you're going to have Will McDonald, a little bit more acclimated to the NFL. You're going to have Jermaine Johnson entering his star prime years. Notice the difference there, guys. Notice the difference. This isn't just a simple, they should be running around and trying to do, all these different things and maneuver the cap in certain ways, to be able to help themselves in the long term, because you're still going to have to pay Garrett Wilson. You're still going to have to pay Sauce Gardner. All these things are going to be taken into account. All these things. And show the difference. Because if you can get Huff on the franchise tag, and if you can get a top receiver, all within that $20 million range, all within that little zone, do you realize that you're going to have even more to play with next season when the salary cap goes up again? The cap's not just going to stay where it is. The cap is going to increase consistently. This is where we're at. The NFL now is at a point where these players are going to make lucrative amounts of money, and the value is going to be shot. You're going to have players make $10+ million a year that aren't very valuable because of the stats they put up. And it's not going to matter. It's not going to matter to these teams because they have to spend the money somewhere. With the Jets, you're in a perfect situation because you can essentially give Bryce Huff the money. You can give him the money. And all at the end of it, you can sit there and say, for 1 year, go out, get your contract, get another 10 plus sack season, and we'll see you in the offseason, and we'll pick up a comp pick. This is where it's so important for the Jets, and you have that flexibility now. The key for Joe Douglas, as he's out and away at the NFL Combine, the key for the organization now is to make sure these restructures get done. His assistant GM is gone. His director of player personnel is gone. He needs to make sure that he's on top of it. This isn't just a scouting thing. This is all about giving the contracts necessary to the free agents that he needs to retain. And at the top of the list is Bryce Huff. And I'm not sitting here saying that the Jets are going to be in deep trouble even if they don't re-sign him, because I don't think that's going to be the case either. But if we're judging this based on the fairness of everything going on, having Bryce Huff for $20 million for 1 year, in an all-in year, you go after T. Higgins, and you go after another running back, and you bring in Ryan Tannehill. Your team looks so much better, and you don't have to spend that much elsewhere, and you don't have to worry about the cost because you have $75 million in cap space. It's such a different argument. It's such a different argument. We're going to take some of your questions here as we continue to roll on. From Dane, Nick, do you think Clemens sticks with higher mass or scraps the idea and helps Will McDonald offset the Huff reps? I think this is an excellent question because when you're looking at the conversation of Michael Clemens, when you're looking at the debate of what the Jets should do with Bryce Huff, I think they're perfectly fine keeping Clemens where he is, because when you have Clemens, wherever he is, what was it, like 270? If he's at 270 and he can play sort of that run defender on the edge and also inside against the pass, that allows you to not have to spend too much money on a backup defensive tackle. Remember, they had to sign 2 free agents last year, Al Woods and Quentin Jefferson, because they didn't have a replacement for some of these other tackles that left in free agency. With Clemens at least being that tweener where you can trust him inside and trust him outside, that's going to help you in the long run. So I don't think they want to cut him and sort of cut his mass down to a certain point where he can only play the edge. because I think that just would be a mistake. It would just be a mistake that they don't have to do. And that's kind of my point there, because if you're looking at the Jets and you're looking at their needs, they have a need at wide receiver. They have a need at safety. They have a need all across the offensive line. They have a need at running back, backup quarterback. Defensive tackle is certainly up there. It's just an underrated one. So how much money are you willing to spend on a free agent? I wouldn't want to spend a lot of money at all. At all, because there's so many different run stuffers in the National Football League now. And the way the Jets play defense with Aaron Rodgers at quarterback, the run game isn't going to matter. You have to trust, when you have Aaron Rodgers as your quarterback, that even if you have to win in a shootout, the shootout is coming via the pass. It's not coming against the run. And you've got your top cornerback room on the planet. So there should be reason to feel confident going into a matchup like that. It's not to say that the Jets would be, wrong to not fill the hole. I think they're going to sign a defensive tackle. But with Michael Clemens as that tweener, you don't have to spend the kind of money you have to in order to bring in a Fletcher Cox. And I still think the Jets are going to try to bring Cox in. I know he's going to be a high-priced free agent. I think Cleveland's going to try to get him as well. But it's up in the air. We still don't know how much money they're going to have, because we don't know when Joe Douglas is going to say, okay, we're done. The Jets could create $70 million in cap space. They also could create 50. And that's going to come down to Joe Douglas essentially saying, all right, what contracts do we want to continue and sort of push off in the coming years? And which contracts do we feel good enough where we can re-sign, restructure these deals, and keep these guys as Jets for the long term? That's the question that's going to have to be answered. That's the question. We have another big cue here from Red John. Is Al Woods coming back? We need a run stuffer. Kind of what I was saying before, Red John. I don't think Al Woods is coming back. And if he is, he's probably coming at the vet minimum, which I think the Jets would sign up for, because I know they really liked Woods as a run-stuffing defender. He was not bad when he was playing before he got hurt and was lost for the year. But he is older. He's on the older side. And I think that you can get a different tackle without spending so much money and keeping the value there. Getting a younger defensive tackle who may cost a little bit more, but not too much, while at the same time being dependable and being an athletic freak who can stuff the run and be a quality three-down, defender. It's not to say that Woods is bad. It's just that 35, 36, this guy's old. He's an old player. And that's where the value comes into this. Is an old defensive tackle here going to have the same value as a late-round rookie? I don't know. Personally, if I were building a team, I would let Woods walk, potentially bring in a younger veteran under the league minimum, that's still kind of deal. And then just trust what you have in Quinton Williams. Trust your edge rushers. The Jets are going to be in a position this year, guys, like I said, where they are not going to have to stop the run consistently. It's just not going to need to happen. When you have Aaron Rodgers as your quarterback, you absolutely can trust your offense to be putting up points. This is not going to be the same offense last year where they could struggle to just get first downs. They're going to be moving up the ball, up and down the field. They are going to move this thing up and down the field. And you have to trust that they're going to be able to win shootouts with Aaron Rodgers at quarterback. So all you need, it's not that you need a run stuffer, it's just you need guys in play to force opposing offenses in inopportune situations. And they already have those guys. They already have Jermaine Johnson. They already have Quinton Williams. The linebacker room is still the best in football. And it's going to be. They're all locked under contracts. C.J. Mosley can't really be cut because he's got a massive cap hit. Quincy Williams, after an all-pro season, is not getting cut. This linebacker room is going to return next season. It's 100% going to return. The only question is going to be, in the smaller spots, who is going to be signed? And we kind of talked about it on Wednesday. If you were the Jets, who would you want to sign in certain aspects? There's going to be a lot of free agent safeties out there, guys. There's going to be a lot of them. And I know the Jets love Jordan Whitehead. I know they want to bring back Ashton Davis. Chuck Clark is going to be a question mark. Do they bring him back? Do they let him hit the open market coming off an ACL surgery? But if I'm the Jets in the safety room, we kind of answer the defensive tackle stuff. It's more finding the right value. But when we're talking about the safety room, we're talking about a group that needs to be better. And they were better last year. They were not the worst group in football like they were 2 years ago. They still struggled at times, but they were not the worst group. Ashton Davis played well. I really liked what I saw from Tony Adams. And Whitehead had some excellent moments. Now you can upgrade with $70 million in cap space. And if you're going to upgrade at safety, there's plenty of different options. I really like Xavier McKinney. I think he could fit very well with this system when he's not on an island himself. You're going to have Sauce Gardner. You're going to have DJ Reed, Michael Carter. You can have safeties play their actual natural positions and not have to worry about anything else. That's going to be great for someone like McKinney. And then the question, of course, like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if the Jets would try to bring in McKinney, keep Adams where he is, and then bring back Ashton Davis, and then Chuck Clark. And you have a four safety battle for 2 to 3 spots. I think that's a perfect spot, a perfect place where the Jets can go, get a nice value signing, bring back Davis, and rebuild the entire secondary in that way where you don't have to put as much pressure on the safety room and you can allow your corners to be that dynamic players that they are. This is what I was talking about. When we spoke on Wednesday, I made this point very, very clear. The Jets were not far away from title contention because they're not. We know they're going to address the offensive line. We know they're going to address the number 2 receiver, and we know they're going to address the backup quarterback. The question marks elsewhere, are they going to bring in another running back for Bryce Huff? Are they going to sign another defensive tackle? What about the safety room? And when you have, like we talked about, $70 million in cap space, those questions don't really become questions anymore. They just become, okay, well, they're clearly going to spend money here. They're clearly going to spend money in these particular positions. And now we can find value at positions that aren't going to be as important, but still could have nice little spurts during the season that help us win the division and get us to where we need to be in the playoffs. Notice the difference here. We're not talking giving a lump sum to a backup quarterback. We're talking lump sum about Bryce Huff and a number 2 wide receiver, and then potentially an offensive lineman. But even then, I think you can get solid value for guards and tackles without having to overspend. If you look at the free agent class of offensive line, I've said this before, look at all of them. Almost every single one of them has an injury concern. So you're not going to spend top dollar at the position in free agency. If you're looking for a top player on the offensive line, you do it in the draft. You go in the NFL draft and you draft your tackle, which sounds like that's what the Jets are going to do. Daniel Jeremiah yesterday spoke, essentially said the Jets are going to have to decide between Talise Fuaga or J.C. Latham. Pretty much what we already knew, right? Pretty much what we already expected. We knew the Jets were going to be focused on the tackle position. And if Fashanu falls to them at 10, that opens the door for them. If Latham or Fuaga are the only 2 available, then the guess is probably Fuaga, but it's a close discussion to have. That's where we are at with the Jets offensive line. They are not going to spend $15 million on one offensive lineman this year because that would just be ludicrous. The entire position group of free agents are full of guys coming off or dealing with injuries. If Bakhtiari gets cut, he is just part of a very long list of guys that have been hurt throughout the last 3 years. And this is kind of what I've been talking about. The value in free agency is the focus, not the cap. It's the value. What value can Joe Douglas get for some of these positions that may not be of top importance? Where's the value that Douglas is looking for? He's not going value at receiver. They are going to get a quality number 2 receiver. They're not looking at value for the backup quarterback. They are going to get a top backup quarterback. Same for offensive line. But the value based on the overall availability, that's where it comes into question. I have a comment here from J-Dubs. I can see the Jets getting a center, putting AVT at right tackle and Tippmann at guard with not many tackles. That seems like the best option. I actually kind of agree, and I'm not saying that I disagree with the idea, particularly about moving AVT to right tackle. I think Joe Tippmann, from what I have heard from the team, he is sound at center, and I don't think they want to move him anywhere else. They look at him as the next Mangold. This is the guy that we're going to trust forever. He is our center. AVT moving to right tackle is really contingent on what happens in the first round and really the second round as well. If the Jets were to get Talise Fuaga at 10, and then they draft, let's say, a wide receiver or a defensive tackle in the third round and continue to address the offensive line in later rounds. If that's the case, AVT is going to stick at right guard, and there's really not much more to say about it. The interesting thing is when Olu Fashanu falls. If Fashanu falls to 10 and the Jets draft him, and then the Jets try to trade into the second round for Christian Haynes, the guard from UConn, that's when the debate of moving AVT to right tackle can absolutely be put up. Because when you have Haynes, and again, I've been saying this, he is a phenomenal player. I've absolutely loved what I've seen on tape. If you're the Jets and you draft Fashanu and Haynes, you can move AVT to right tackle, put Haynes at right guard, and Fashanu at left tackle. And yes, you're starting 2 rookies on the line in a make-or-break season, but you have 2 plug-and-play day 1 starters. That is fantastic. Fantastic. And if the Jets are going to move up into the second round, I truly believe it has to be for Haynes. If you feel you can get Haynes, if you feel that there's a deal to get for the UConn guard, you have to take it. Because I really like this player, man. I really like him. Really like him. And it could save the Jets' offensive line without having to spend so much money. Because you're going to have AVT on a rookie deal, Tippmann on a rookie deal. You're going to have Fashanu and Haynes on rookie deals. 4 of the 5 positions are on rookie deals. That is excellent. Excellent. Not much more to say on it because that's all you can ask for. You let them grow and develop together. You bring in veterans to be their backup, and you let them go. You let them go. So I like the comment here, J-Dubs, the idea of putting AVT to tackle, but it really is going to depend on what happens with free agency and also the first and second rounds. Because you're not going to do it if you don't have a starter, plug-and-play, day 1 guard ready to go for AVT. I have another comment here from John Gunning, joining late. I think the increased cap space will allow the Jets to work out a deal for Huff. We'll see. I talked about this earlier on the program here. This is what I've been saying now for an hour. I've been saying this for a few hours. I have a story coming out on Sports Illustrated for those of you that are going to be interested, kind of breaking down what we're looking at. But if you're the Jets, with the salary cap increasing this much, and you can restructure contracts to get up to close to $60, $70 million in cap space, it's not about, you don't even have to give a long-term deal to Bryce Huff. Franchise tag him. It's $20 million. Franchise him. And if he doesn't like it, then you trade him for value. You get a second-round pick for Bryce Huff. The salary cap increasing this much is a blessing for the Jets because it's going to allow them to be flexible with a player that wants his money. And if Bryce Huff is going to be pissed off and not want to report unless he has a long-term deal, that's all good for him. The Jets can use him as trade bait to get back into the second round for this year's draft. It's really that simple. What they should be doing now over the next week before the trade deadline, not the trade deadline, the franchise tag requirements are out. The first thing the Jets should be doing is restructuring Laken Tomlinson, C.J. Mosley, and every other major contract they can to build as much cap space as possible. That should be the focus. Goal number one. Okay, we have $15 million in salary cap space. Jesus. Let's go build some more. Let's go restructure C.J. Mosley. Let's go restructure Laken Tomlinson. Let's go out and get a restructured deal for Quinnen and Quincy Williams. Let's see if we can do it for Aaron Rodgers. And you keep accumulating that cap space to the point where you now have enough to franchise tag a player like Huff and then lock up free agents at receiver, at offensive line, at quarterback, at running back, tackle, safety. $40 million is plenty of room for every GM to make it work. And that's the amount of cap space the Jets could have if they restructure the contracts and give Huff the franchise tag. Hell, I'll even go as far as say this: if they get to $50 million, if they get to $50 million in cap space, you can still give Bryce Huff the franchise tag and have $30 million to work with. That is plenty of money. Remember, guys, we're kind of forgetting this as well. When a player signs for, let's look at Allen Lazard's contract, will you? So we'll talk about Allen Lazard here for a couple minutes. Look at Allen Lazard's contract. It's a 4-year, $44 million deal. What was the cap hit? The money that was taken off the cap from Lazard's first year. It was $3 million. $3 million. So to sit here and say that the 4-year, $44 million deal, oh, it's $11 million per year. That's $11 million off the salary cap. No. Because each year, the cap hit goes up for these players. That's how contracts are usually based. That's why a lot of the restructures that are going to happen for players whose contracts are at the end. C.J. Mosley has a cap hit of over $20 million. They're going to restructure that so they don't have to deal with it. That's the difference. So if you were to sign T. Higgins with $30 million in cap space and you get him for $20 million annually, that doesn't necessarily mean $20 million are taken off the salary cap right away. It means the average is going to be $20 million. His first year, T. Higgins' first year for a contract, the first year could be around $5 million as a cap hit. And now you have $25 million, and with the number 2 receiver position completely solved. Completely solved. Notice how different that conversation is. Just because you see a contract that says $44 million, $30 annually, that doesn't mean every year is $20 million or $30 million. Look at Jalen Hurts' contract, for example. He signs a 5-year, $255 million deal with, I think it was like $50 million annually. Jalen Hurts, $50 million a year annually. You know how much he's counting against the salary cap this year? $13 million. You know how much he's making next year? $21 million. For a quarterback who's still a top 10 signal caller, making $21 million against the salary cap. Philadelphia is going to be able to build. We talk about the Jets cap space and all the room that they have. Philadelphia right now has $30 million in cap space without any restructures. they can get to $70-80 million. $70-80 million with their restructures. Think about that. The Jets are in a very good position. Philadelphia is in incredible shape. This is where the salary cap coming in is so important. It's so important because now you're going to have a bidding war for some of these top free agents, and the Jets could come in with a top deal, or they can get a guy that wants to get a deal done immediately and is looking for a good value. The Jets are in a perfect spot here. Perfect spot. Another question here from John. Franchise tag might be the way to go. Last question. If you could choose one backup quarterback going into 2024, who would it be? Great question. And it's a difficult one, right? Because if you're looking at the Jets' backup quarterback situation, you want a guy that can come in and start in a pinch and start consistently. God forbid what happens to Aaron Rodgers happens again. Knock on wood. But if you're the Jets, the name that I think makes the most sense is Ryan Tannehill because of his work with Todd Downing. He's probably the top backup quarterback that's going to be available in free agency. Tannehill's definitely up there. I know a lot of people like Jacoby Brissett, the Gardner Minshew type. But if I'm the Jets, and this might be a little unpopular, that's perfectly fine. But if I'm the Jets and I know that I'm going to have 3 to 4 changes on the offensive line, and the group hasn't been able to stay healthy for the last 3 years, I need a quarterback that can create nothing out of something. Something out of nothing, whatever it is. My English is completely off today. It's been running around like crazy. You want a backup quarterback that can create something out of nothing. And Gardner Minshew's not going to do that. Jacoby Brissett isn't really going to do that either. They're both real pocket passing quarterbacks. If you're looking for a backup quarterback who can run the offense effectively while keeping everyone in line, while getting a couple of wins here and there, the names I look at, the names I target, Tyrod Taylor, Marcus Mariota, guys that can create on their own. Guys that it doesn't matter if the offensive line is bad, they can run outside the pocket and pick up some rushing yards and keep the offense moving, keep them on schedule. Look at Tyrod Taylor, if you will. I think it's a perfect comparison because when you look at the Giants down the stretch, at the beginning of the season, the Giants' offensive line was atrocious. It was worse than the Jets. 10 times worse. But it was saved because Tyrod Taylor was able to facilitate moving the ball down the field, protected the ball down the field like a backup quarterback needs to, and protect a bad offensive line. The Giants' offensive line got better late in the year. But it's also a simple case of the Giants' offensive line got better because Tyrod Taylor was bailing them out in a lot of difficult situations. It happened in both games against Philadelphia. I watched it live. Taylor walks in and the offense looks incredible because he's using his legs. If you're the Jets, it's not about looking for a quarterback that can run Todd Downing and Nathaniel Hackett's offense. It's not what you're looking for. What you're looking for is a guy that can create something out of nothing. Tyrod Taylor, Marcus Mariota, these guys are deficient passers. You can't trust them to win 4 or 5 games a year. But to keep an offense afloat for a game or two, that's the kind of backup you need. That is a legitimate backup quarterback. That's what the Jets should be focused on. So while there's going to be some pocket passing backups that make a lot of sense, I'm going to be the one that sits here and says the best option for them is a scrambler. A guy that can keep the offense moving, keep the offense in advantageous situations without having to worry about turning the football over. Tyrod Taylor doesn't turn the ball over. Mariota kind of does, but Mariota, he's Mariota. He's a flawed guy. I don't know what to tell you. But if I'm the Jets and I'm throwing money out to a backup, I think Taylor's at the top of the list. I really do. It's just, you look at everything that makes a good backup quarterback, and keeping the offense on schedule is at the top of the list. Bryce showed that he can do it with Washington last year, but I don't trust him over a longer stretch. I would trust someone like Tyrod Taylor over him. I really would. He's been to the playoffs. He's had success. He's had success in multiple systems. He's the kind of guy that makes a lot of sense to me. A lot of sense. All right, I am going to jump it off a little early today. We're at the 45-minute mark. I have another shift and I got to make dinner. So appreciate all of you guys for jumping on. We're going to be back on Monday talking down and breaking out the NFL Combine news that is going to come out next week. Joe Douglas is going to set and talk to the media potentially on Wednesday. So we'll have news and notes from there. So guys, make sure that you follow along. For those of you coming on for the first time, thanks for jumping on. Like, subscribe, share the video, everything like that. All support is appreciated. So thank you guys so much, and I will see you all on Monday evening.